Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our masterclass. I see people coming in, and while we're still waiting for everybody to join, I just wanted to go through a couple of technical aspects of our masterclass and the Livestorm platform that we're all in. So first of all, you are able to use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. You can interact throughout the masterclass. If you have any technical difficulties, you can send a message, I'll respond. It is advised to use the Chrome browser because it's most compatible with Livestorm. So if you have any issues, you can always exit and then come back using the Chrome browser. At the end of the masterclass as well, we are going to have a time for a couple of questions. And those questions you can put in the questions tab as well at the bottom of your screen. So this way we're able to keep track of all the questions, and other people can also upvote your questions if they would like to see that question answered. As some of you already found the reaction button throughout the masterclass as well, you can use the react function so you can share your reactions with Stefan, which also, yeah, I'll see a lot of thumbs up, great. So as Stefan can see your reactions as well. Now, we're very excited for today's masterclass as it's going to be hosted by Stefan. And Stefan is a leading expert in cognitive psychology and attention studies. He's also a professor at Utrecht University and head of the research group AttentionLab, which investigates the impact of attention on our perception of the world. Now, Stefan is also an accomplished author with multiple books under his name, including How Attention Works and Concentration, as you can see on the screen. And Stefan really sheds light on how we process information and offers practical tips on improving concentration, backed by scientific research, of course. From advertisers to airport designers, Stefan shows how attention architects influence our daily lives. Now, please give a warm welcome for Stefan. Enjoy the masterclass, and I will see you at the end for the Q&A. And Stefan, the virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's really weird not to see you, but let's go for it. And hopefully I'm going to be able to entertain you in the next 40 minutes and tell you everything you need to know about attention and concentration. But before I do that, I would like to introduce you to Brian Cullinan. Brian Cullinan works at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And a couple of years ago, we had I think it was a great honor for him to have this job. He was namely responsible for taking the envelopes of the Oscar winners to the show and handing out the envelopes to the right persons. And he was very proud of this job. He was tweeting about it the whole time. Look, here, I'm heading to the red carpet right now. I have my briefcase, and a couple of minutes later, look, Best Actress, Emma Stone, I'm backstage. At this particular moment in time, Brian makes a huge mistake. I don't know if you guys remember what happened during that Oscar show, but Brian handed out the wrong envelope. And I can unfortunately not show you the movie right now, but this is the scene you probably remember. There is a person on stage and he has the wrong envelope. He handed out the wrong envelope to the wrong movie, and it took minutes before this error was corrected. And the day after, PricewaterhouseCoopers sent out this huge apology statement saying this will never happen again. We take full responsibility for the mistake that happened. We apologize to everyone. And unfortunately, Brian is no longer responsible for handing out the envelopes at the Oscar nominee. He lost his particular job, at least doing this part of his job as PricewaterhouseCoopers. So the moral of the story is something so simple as handing out the right envelope to the right person can go horribly wrong if you're tweeting the whole time. So doing something like multitasking and a very simple task like this can already go horribly wrong. And this all has to do with, of course, our concentration. We can only perform one thing at a time, one task that requires attention. And in our daily world that we're in right now, there's a lot of information and there are a lot of distractions. And these distractions can be damaging to our concentration. So this might be the right moment in time to define these terms, because I've now mentioned attention, I've used the word concentration. To me, these are two different things. So let me try to explain what they are. So when we talk about attention, we refer to the selection of all incoming information. So when we open our eyes, when we open our ears, our senses are bombarded with all type of sensory information, and our brain simply has to select. That selection is called attention. Only information that is attended can be stored in the brain in memory. Information that is not attended is simply ignored. There's no such thing as unconscious influence. There's been a lot of debate about this. A lot of people think that's the case. When you look at the scientific evidence, it's extremely limited. Only information that is attended can be stored in memory and can subsequently be used later. Information that is not attended is simply ignored. So if you're not attending what I'm speaking about right now, it has absolutely no purpose. And also, if I'm listening to something and I really want to store that information, you need your attention in order to store that information. Okay, so that's attention. And that's attention to the outside world. But of course, you also have attention for the inside world, right? Also there, you cannot have all your thoughts at the same time. You cannot come up with multiple things at the same time. Our brain needs to select. And yet now you can, of course, reason that the brain is limited. That's true. But you could also say that it's apparently, when we look at evolution, it's the most appropriate solution. If we would have needed a brain that could process all of the information around us, evolution would have resulted with us with a different system. So apparently we only need to process part of the information in order to survive. However, it does require us to select the right information. And that's something we'll be talking about a bit more. Okay, so that's attention. It's the selection filter in order to deal with the capacity limits of our brain. Then concentration is sustaining that attention for a longer period of time. So focusing attention is relatively easy. I can now ask you to look at the time or to look at your phone. That's all relatively easy. But sustaining attention, concentration, that's complicated because attention is quite fluid. It goes here and there depending on the environment. If now something new happens in your environment, your attention will be automatically captured. There's nothing you can do about that. That's a reflex. And even if you designed your environment in a perfect way, there might now be something happening internally that might capture your attention. And this means by definition that your concentration will be broken. So concentration requires you to keep your attentional filter focused on something in the outside world or the inside world for a longer period of time without interruption. And concentration is important. When you look at the education system, we know that students who are able to learn without interruption store that information more strongly compared to students who study with interference. The brain mechanisms associated with storing information, like the hippocampus, are simply less active during periods of distraction compared to periods of concentration. And still, if you look behind me, there's the university library, and there are students studying right now between themselves and the books, their mobile phone. So I think a lot of people are knowing that this concentration is crucial, but still it's quite difficult to integrate that in your life. And hopefully I'll be able to give you some tips and tricks about how to do it. Because our mobile phone and social media play quite an important role here, right? And we all know that these things are quite distracting. But one thing I would like to highlight about what we know about the mobile phone is about notifications. It is not the notification itself that is so distracting. It's the association you have with that notification. So say I'm sending you a message right now. You're receiving this message and you're hearing or you're feeling this new coming information. The signal itself is not so distracting, but it's the association. You create something that I call a mental itch. You become very curious about what is that message. Because we associate new coming information with a reward. Like new information is seen as a reward for the human brain. And then we know that new information or rewards that are unpredictable, there are more addictive than rewards that are predictable. And that's the problem with these notifications, right? You never know exactly if the notification you receive right now is a notification for a new cat movie, or is it about the colleague that you've met yesterday and is now sending you a message. So that curiosity that we have makes that social media, and especially these notifications that are associated with social media, are so distracting. So this is one way to make sure that doesn't happen. Just shut off your notifications, because then the train of thoughts doesn't happen. And that's not something you can control. Even me, like I know a lot about concentration, and even when I'm in my car and I have my mobile phone far away, not within reach, still when I hear a notification when I'm standing at a stoplight, I want to know what that notification is. And we see it in the lab here as well. We're doing really complicated experiments, tasks that participants need to perform. And just by sending them a message, we can see that the performance drops, but not temporarily, but for a longer period of time. So knowing that you have a new incoming information makes the part of your brain already distracted. This is a beautiful image, right? It's very much sort of a sign of the times. And this picture went viral. And not for the right reasons, unfortunately, because these kids were actually making a school assignment about this Nachtwacht painting. But still, I think we all recognize that we are pretty much glued to our phones the whole time. But not only our phones, also when we're outside, the competition for our attention is very, very strong. A lot of companies know that they have to capture your attention in order to convey a message. So it's not only during our daily life, but also when we go outside, that we have a fierce competition for our attention. But luckily, we know better than ever how concentration works in the brain. And I'm convinced that when you tell about how this works in the brain, this will allow you to integrate this in your daily life. And this is one of my goals. Tell you everything that science knows about concentration, and then hopefully you can start to integrate this in your daily life. And one of the things that I'll be telling you right now already, in order to keep track of that during this lecture, are the circles of attention. And it's something, I'm a tennis player, something that I experience quite a lot. And this also actually comes from sports psychology. So when you talk about the circles of attention, ideally you're in circle 1. And when you're in circle 1, you are fully concentrated. You're only thinking about your task. However, you could also be in the second circle. And this is sort of how you should be, how you want to be. Like you probably now want to think about focusing on this lecture for a longer period of time. And then you also might already be experiencing that this is not happening, that you're not fully focused yet. And this is thinking about the fact that you're not fully focused. This means that you're in circle 2. Well, these are also distracting thoughts. So we want to go back to circle 1. Circle 3 is about certain distractions that you might have that will impair your success. So this is your environment, things that distract you, that you don't want to involve. And you're thinking about, I want to put away my mobile phone, blah, 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 blah. All these things are also distracting thoughts, and you want to return to circle 1. Sometimes you're also in circle 4, and you think about failure. What happens if I'm not successful in this presentation? You want to think about the performances. What are the consequences of not being successful in this presentation, or me not finishing this report in time? And circle 6 is even more horrible when you think about, what am I doing here, right? Sort of this metacognition about you not focusing on your work, and if this is the right work that I should be doing, or should I perhaps change jobs? Well, these are things that you can integrate into your daily life. You can really think, when you're concentrating, where are my thoughts? In which circle of attention is my thought now? And can I come back to circle number 1? So keep this in track while you're watching this webinar. If you think about it, you're distracted, in which circle you are, and then try to come back to the first circle with you and your full focus. So there's actually quite a lot of word outside on the internet, on Wikipedia, that our attention span has now decreased, and that we can only concentrate for 9 or 8 seconds, depending on the source that you take. Well, I already see some people reacting, and it's quite interesting to look at this statement for a bit longer, because there's absolutely no scientific evidence, so that's hopefully the good news right now, that our attention span is decreasing. It doesn't mean it's not true, but I'm a scientist, and I can simply not answer the question whether we can concentrate less than a couple of years ago. There's just no data. I also don't think it is actually the case, because, let me explain. Evolution is, of course, not that quick that all of a sudden we have a brain that is no longer able to focus. Our brain hasn't changed, but our environment has changed, but we can control our environment. So I'm confident, I'm a positive guy, so I'm confident that if we design our environment in a way that is similar to 20 or 30 years ago, in essence, we could still concentrate just as well as 20 or 30 years ago. So it's really weird to say our attention span is a number of seconds, because it very much depends on the situation. Suppose that I'm telling you right now that this morning I won the lottery, and now I'm going to ask you a question. If you answer that question correctly, I'm going to give you 5,000 euros. It's not going to happen, don't worry, but still, suppose this has happened. what's going to happen to your concentration in this situation, right? You're going to put away all your notifications. You're going to get pen and paper. You're going to write down everything I say, and you will have no problem concentrating for 40 minutes. So motivation is a crucial factor. And I think that also is something that we have to think about when we consider attention span to be one number, right? The number is going to be so dependent on the situation that you're in. And then there are huge individual differences. Some people are just simply, by how they're born, by default, better in concentrating than others. Still, I would really like to have your insights, and therefore we have the first poll, and to see whether we can sample your ideas about your concentration span. So here's the first poll. Answer if you have the impression that your attention span has decreased compared to 10 years ago. So please submit your vote. And then how do we see the results? I think we can go to the polls, right? And there we can see, if you look at the bottom right, you can see the polls. And therefore, the scientific evidence might perhaps not say, or might not be strong enough to say that we have a shorter concentration span than a couple of years ago. You, in sort of quite a majority, actually think that your concentration span has decreased. But do realize, I think if you look at the literature, this is only due to the fact that your environment has changed. And if you would recreate your environment in such a way that it's still possible, I know that's complicated, but yeah, let's just dream a bit, that this is still possible. By the way, the data about the goldfish actually came from Microsoft Canada, which is, of course, not any type well-respected scientific institute, so to say. Okay, so how does concentration work in the brain? Well, in order for me to explain it, I need to tell you something about working memory. And working memory is the part of the brain that is responsible for executing complicated action. So not everything taxes your working memory. For instance, walking, biking, in the Netherlands at least, are things that you do frequently. They are motor actions, and those are tasks that you perform without requiring attention or your working memory. However, certain tasks, how many times you do them, will always require your working memory. For instance, talking, listening, reading, writing, all the listening, doing computation, thinking, all these things, they never go automatically and they will tax your working memory. However, the working memory can only perform one task at a time, and it's fragile. If something happens in your environment, your working memory will stop doing what it's doing and will automatically direct attention to the thing that is new. So interruptions and distractions will automatically stop you performing your task. That's a reflex. You need that in order to be safe, right? Some people tell me, I don't want to be distracted. Well, in essence, you actually do want to be distracted because this will allow you to stay safe, right? If something happens now in your environment, you need to be able to detect that automatically. So working memory, responsible for executing complicated actions, it can only do one thing at a time, and it's fragile. So you could compare working memory to like a workbench, where certain material was on the workbench to perform a particular task. However, if you want to do another task, you have to get the current material off the workbench, and you have to get new material on the workbench. This takes time. So every time you start another task, even when it's not something you want, somebody starts talking to you, you automatically stop what you're doing, and then you have to get the material off the workbench and get new, the old material off the workbench and new material on the workbench. This takes time. You will be more prone to errors because there might be material left on the workbench for your previous tasks, and you're also going to be more stressed out and be more mentally fatigued because every time you need to switch material, this is going to require mental effort. Therefore, multitasking does not exist. You saw that. I think you all saw this coming, right? This point, when you're doing two things at the same time that both require attention, that's not possible. What you're doing then is you're switching tasks the whole time. This will take time. By the way, males and females are just as poor in multitasking, so we can get that myth out of the way as well. There's absolutely no evidence to back up the claim that that's different between males and females. This can be disappointing for some. This can also be great news for others. There's absolutely no difference. We can all not do it. Right? Let me be very clear about that. So, and multitasking is not always a bad thing, right? When you're cooking and you're watching your kids, this is a good moment to start multitasking, and you might be able to finish your dinner later, but there's no fingers that are stuck in things that can go horribly wrong while you're cooking. So multitasking in many situations can actually be a good idea. However, when you're cooking and you're checking your kids or doing something else, it will take longer before your dinner is finished. It will be less tasteful because you might make a mistake, and you'll be more mentally fatigued. But in that situation, it was the most optimal thing to do. So not everything is multitasking. For instance, I can walk and talk at the same time because walking does not tax my working memory. And actually, to be very honest, I actually prefer walking and talking instead of sitting still and talking. I'm sitting still right now, and it's an online lecture, so it's great. But preferably, if I was in a physical room, I'd be walking around the whole time because, as you probably already noticed, I have a lot of motor energy. And some of you might have a lot of motor energy as well. And that's all a thumbs up for the people who have a lot of motor energy and difficulty sitting still. Yes, you're in the same group as I am. And this is interesting because there are also a lot of people probably who don't have that, who don't experience a lot of motor energy and are now sitting comfortably still and have no problem sitting still. Can we raise a thumb up for the people who, or perhaps the lovely smile for the people that are fully relaxed and have not difficulty sitting still? And this is an interesting thing, right? This is a funny poll that we're having right now, but this already shows there's a lot of neurodiversity. So there are a lot of people who are very busy like me and have difficulty sitting still, while other people have no problem. So when you want to have a good conversation with me, let's go walking, because I'm able to focus a lot better when I'm allowed to move. And we actually know from children with ADHD that they can actually only learn when they are allowed to move. And this was during the pandemic quite problematic because we had a lot of these video meetings and I was required to sit still the whole time. I bought a Bluetooth headset, and a lot of the meetings that I did walking, and I could concentrate a lot better. Because what happens to a kid with ADHD who is asked to sit still and listen? That's impossible, right? A person with ADHD who has to sit still is going to require all the mental effort and all the attention to sit still. For them, sitting still is a task, and then they will not be able to listen. So this is something that is a combination of combining two tasks, which is not multitasking because walking goes automatically, that can actually be beneficial. So I think we would have more respect for the individual differences that we have, the neurodiversity, in essence that some people just need to move and need to get rid of the motor energy in order to concentrate. When I'm listening to a lecture like I'm giving right now, I'll be probably playing with this pen, be painting or doing some other things just to be able to get rid of my motor energy. So multitasking is in many situations not a good idea. For instance, if you're working on a presentation while listening to this video lecture, what you're doing is then you're switching the whole time. And this is the type of days when you go home where you have to get pen out of the way, I'll break it. These are the days when you go home and you're really tired, right? Because you've switched tasks the whole time, and this is probably made to result in a less efficient day. And the stress levels will be a lot higher. Because when you're interrupted frequently, the people who've experienced that by the end of the day had higher stress levels compared to the people who could work uninterruptedly. Therefore, I think the point that I'm trying to make will be very clear to you already if we talk about open office spaces. Because in my opinion, open office spaces are a very bad idea. If you look at the scientific evidence, we already know that it's a bad idea for quite some time now when we talk about concentration, but also about mental health. We know that people that work in an open office spaces, they're sick earlier, and when they're sick longer. So they're sick more frequently. That's what I wanted to phrase. And of course, this is quite related to the distractions, right, that I've talked about. If you know that the brain is so sensitive to distractions and that the brain will lose its concentration when something happens in your environment, you will notice that if you have difficulty concentrating, and there are a lot of people who just out of neurodiversity have difficulty concentrating, working on an open office space is simply impossible, especially in an open office space that is very poorly organized, where there are a lot of people talking, where there's a lot of visual distractions by people walking by, or where there's a lot of auditory distractions. The brain is constantly being in a situation where attention is captured almost in a continuous mode of multitasking. And we also know from observational studies that it might take up to 20 minutes before people pick up on their original task again. So you're very focused in an open office space, somebody starts talking to you, and then this is the moment where you will start checking your email or go get some coffee, because you were fully in the zone, right? You were in circle one of your attention, and all of a sudden you're grabbed out of that zone, and it's going to take a lot of energy, a lot of mental effort to go back to your original task again. This does not mean that open office spaces are not possible. Again, I was referring to the university library earlier. And the university library is actually a great example of an open office space that actually works. Well, imagine you having a phone conversation in a university library. You'll be kicked out immediately, right? There are very strict rules in these university libraries that, if you ask me, could very easily apply to open office spaces as well. And I am very much sometimes involved in the design in open office space, and you will be surprised how poorly sometimes they are designed. When you think about visual distractions, there are a lot of open views where you can see a lot of people walking by, and it's quite a bad idea. So good rules in the open office space, and for perhaps even hybrid open office spaces, where depending on the type of tasks that you're doing, you will decide either to go to a busy part of the open office space where you're allowed to talk, but when you really need to focus, you go to a different part of the open office space that is nicely made in a way that you're actually able to concentrate. So I think this is something that could well work, but I think you also have experienced many instances where open office spaces are extremely poorly designed and the rules are not followed. So therefore, a lot of you might have preferred to work from home, because in essence, potentially working from home could be very good for your concentration. This is our second poll, because now I would really like to know what you prefer. And I think it's good then also to think about this neurodiversity again. Just look at the results, fill in your favorite answer, we're going to look at the poll results. And this is interesting. We see in the poll that the hybrid version is very, very popular. Working from home, still substantially 1 out of 6 doesn't want to go to the office. But then, very interesting as well, that's the group that I am in. 1 out of 3 people, oh no, I'm looking at it wrongly. Sorry, 75%, 70%, 9%. Yeah, no, 9% of the people prefers working from the office. And those might be the people that are not don't really find the motivation to work from home, or like their colleagues a lot, like me. I really like being here. So I don't like being at home working, because home is also where my private life is. And I would like to have an office where I can work, and then I go home, then I'm really home. I find it complicated if these two mingle too much. But the hybrid version, I can totally understand, especially given how open office spaces are currently designed. But it is important to realize that still there is 8% who really likes to work from the office. So we should take that into account when we design our open office spaces. So suppose you just had twins. Then you don't want to work from home, because there will be so many distractions. So what I'm really worried about, that a lot of these offices are now designed for people to meet up. And then what's of course going to happen is that this is going to be a problem if people want to go to the office to concentrate and focus. So design your office in such a way that all of these possibilities are possible, that people can communicate with each other, because we need to meet each other to be creative, and also to instruct new employees about sort of the company and to educate them. But there will be also people sitting in that same room who want to focus and want to concentrate. If you're working from home, there are also complications. And one of the things is that you don't have the switch costs that I told you about. So every time you switch a task, this takes time. But when you go to the office, you have travel time. And that travel time actually has a function. Besides, it allows you to move from one place to the other, but it also allows you to make the sort of mental transition from being home, going to the office, and at the end of the day, going to the office to going at home. And that's time you can actually use to sort of compensate for the switch costs. And I do that as well. I have a 15 minutes bike ride, and that bike ride, I don't listen to a podcast, but I actually think about my work, my day, and start preparing for the upcoming evening. And when you work from home, you don't have that, right? You're having coffee, you're having breakfast, you're saying goodbye to the people that are in your house or not, and then you immediately start working. That's not possible. You cannot expect yourself to open your laptop and to immediately start working. So one trick that a lot of people do, and perhaps you can share it also in the chat, what your trick is. But I see a lot of people actually make a walk in the morning before they go to work, although they're working from home, right? So they have their morning ritual, they go outside, they take a walk, and then they start working. And you can do the same thing at the end of the day. And this is clearing your working memory, right? Clearing your working memory and preparing for the upcoming task. Doing something that goes automatically. It can also be doing the laundry or something, just a motor action that doesn't require your working memory. Don't listen to a podcast too much. I'm saying this also to myself because I've noticed a couple of months ago that when I'm outside, I'm generally listening to podcasts quite frequently. This is, of course, a bad idea, right? Because then you're still doing something that requires your attention. But more about that later. By the way, is listening to music multitasking? No, it's not. Depending on the type of music you listen to and depending on who you are. So let's do a quick poll again. Who loves working with music on? And let's use the hearty smiley face. Who always works with music on? So that's going to be me. It keeps me active. It keeps me awake. I love music and I'm able to create a wall of sound around me, which makes sure that I'm not distracted. So without the rap group, or the Euro house group 2 Unlimited, I would never have been able to reach my high school. Like I really need music around me, and I still listen to a lot of music. But I think the taste has improved a bit. And now let's do the thumbs up for people who cannot work while listening to music. Just impossible. That's so interesting, right? Just look at the neurodiversity again. We have so much differences between individuals. I know that there are people now listening saying, I cannot do it. When I'm listening to music, I automatically listen to the music and I'm attending. There will even be some people here who listen to the radio while they're working and saying, I don't listen to the radio. It's just sound. I just need sound around me, white noise, and I'm able to ignore that. Yes, some people are able to do it, but some people, so there are individual differences there. But for some people, it's not multitasking, especially if you listen to music without lyrics, right? So instrumental music like DJ sets or neoclassical music, it's perfect for your concentration if you're able to ignore it, because you're creating a wall of sound and that makes you less prone to distractions. Because distraction is an abrupt onset of a stimulus that wasn't previously there. And if there's music around you, this abrupt onset will be drawn in the noise and therefore it will not distract you. So for some people, that's actually a really good solution. I have a lot of more tips for working from home. One additional thing I would like to mention there is these types of video calls. This one is great, of course. Let's not forget that. But many companies, we see that these video calls take 95 minutes and 95 seconds, and then 1 second later, the next call starts. Think about the switch costs again. When you're in a physical office, you have some time to take a walk from one location to the other. Even if it's only a couple of minutes, we know that leaving an office already empties your working memory, and then this will allow you to prepare for the next meeting. That mini break that you're having, that has a function. So when you're working from home, you frequently don't have that. So what I can advise you, and I know some companies do that, is that these video calls by default take 15 minutes or 40 minutes even at the Rabobank here in the Netherlands. I think that's a brilliant idea, because this will allow you to have at least some time to prepare for the upcoming task. Take a short break, take a walk, else you'll have very few steps at the end of the day. But also in terms of mental energy, I think it's a really good idea. So talk about this. Talk about the state of your open office space. Talk about how you deal with these online meetings, just knowing that how the brain works. And then communication, right? We know that a lot of people also working from home, especially working from home, they want to communicate really quickly with their colleagues. And a person that replies to their email instantly is generally seen as very reliable. But I think we need to change that thinking a little bit, because what is that person doing? If somebody is responding to their email within 1 second, it means that they're not concentrating. So I actually want to give a heads up and props to the people who only check their email twice a day. Because this means, and of course you need to communicate about this, right? But this means that in the meantime, they're actually focusing. So I don't expect you to reply to my email within 5 minutes. If you reply to my email always the whole time, it probably means that one message from me will interfere with your concentration, and you allow me to break your concentration, which I don't want. I just want to send you a message, right? I don't expect you to respond instantly. WhatsApp is not for work. I think, therefore, we also need to make very clear rules about how we deal with these types of notifications and these type of incoming messages. You can use WhatsApp for work, but then only for the jokes, right? And not for work-related stuff. You have a day off, and then you're still interrupted by new incoming information. So it will be great if you, in your company, your organization, you talk about how you deal with communication. What's your communication style? When do you use email? When do you use WhatsApp? When do you use other types of platforms? Because I get the impression that this is not something people talk about quite frequently. You don't want to be able to be reached the whole day. You need periods of concentration. Talked about music. You can compare concentration to a muscle. If you haven't trained for a while, you will notice that you will have problem concentrating. And looking at the poll, some of you are also experiencing that currently. But we also know from studies that when you want to start concentrating again, this takes time. Just like if you want to go to the gym, you have to build it up slowly but gradually. And not everyone can become a bodybuilder. Tell me all about it. But so we all have our limits about how good we can be in concentration. But I think we can all try to reach our optimal level of concentration level. And there's no perfect training schedule or scheme that I can give you. Because of this neurodiversity, everyone who promises you that, right, follow this scheme and you'll be better in concentrating, is simply wrong. I don't believe in the Pomodoro technique where you put an alarm clock for 25 minutes, because your 25 minutes is not mine 25 minutes. And depending on the task that you're doing, 25 minutes can be too long or too short. So I don't believe all these techniques, because every brain is different. And this is something that I hopefully have been able to convince you of. There's one exception. There's one exception to a training protocol, so to say, that I think has enough scientific evidence to back up the claim that it's good for your concentration, and that's mindfulness. We know from many scientific studies that mindfulness is actually very good for your concentration. It makes you very aware of what distractions are and what it means that your mind starts to wander. You could argue that mindfulness is concentration, but then boiled down to its bare essence. It makes you so conscious about what it means to be distracted. And this is perhaps the reason why scientific studies now show that the effects of mindfulness actually generalize, and that you're actually become better in concentration. It's not the same as taking a break, right? People who have experience with this, you know that it is concentration. So when people tell me I do a lot of mindfulness during my breaks, I don't think they really understand what mindfulness is. I don't understand it as well fully, right? It's very complicated, but still, it's training protocol. And when you went to the gym, it will make you stronger. But after the gym, you'll be really tired. So this is something to take into account when you do this. Sleep is a very good predictor about how good your concentration will be the next day. I know it's a little bit open door, but I really want to kick it in. Because I think it's quite crucial. We know from studies that people sleep less compared to a couple of years ago, which of course has to do with the mobile phone. It's not the blue light emitted by the phone. That's way too little to actually influence you. It's just the apps. The apps keep your attention, your arousal way too high. So that's something you might want to take into account. If you have problems sleeping, people advise you generally not to interact with your mobile phone at least half an hour, 1 hour before you want to go to sleep. There are many other tips and tricks I can give you there, but time is limited, unfortunately, because I also want to discuss what happens when your brain is offline. Because, in a perfect situation where there's no Wi-Fi, your attention will be still limited. Your battery will go down, and you will have, after a while, you'll not be able to concentrate. The concentration is by definition limited. Our brain sometimes needs to take a rest. And when you're tired and when your arousal is low, so that's here on the x-axis on the left side, you will have problems with the performance. On the right side, too much stress, of course, you're going to make more mistakes, but also to the left. When you're fatigued, when you sleep, when you're not motivated, this will indicate that you'll be more prone to distractions. This will start into a period of multitasking. You'll make even more errors and you become more tired. So this is time to take a break. And what do you then do? Well, preferably not a technology break where you still interact with your mobile phone. So you do something that actually really requires your attention to take a break. So we know that taking a walk in nature or any quiet environment, people can concentrate better than after taking a break in the busy city center. But of course, right here, your attention is still involved. And we also know from how experts and now geniuses spend their day that they take a lot of breaks. For instance, here Darwin, he took a short walk in the morning, also preparing for the upcoming task. He had a solitary breakfast and then focused work for 1.5 hours. Also, after lunch, taking before lunch in this case, taking a break, and then a third walk of the day, somewhere in the evening. What also is interesting here is his clear defined blocks. Every day looked the same. He had this way of perfectly looking at how his day was organized in a very structured way. And everybody knew when they could reach Darwin, yes or no. And ideally, perhaps this is something you want to do as well. Here, Tchaikovsky, long walks after lunch and 2 hours, 2 hours of composing. So he only focused for 4 hours a day. That might not look a lot, but still, when was the last time that you were able to focus for 4 hours without interruptions? And then Beethoven. Took in the evening, took a long, vigorous walk. He always carried a pencil and a couple of music papers in his pocket for any good ideas he might have while taking a walk. But also look at his breakfast. He had 60 beans every day. He had this attention ritual to clear his working memory and to prepare for the upcoming task. So you might want to make such a drawing of yourself, right? What is your perfect day? When are you most productive? Don't believe eat that frog where you have to do the most important thing in the morning. I'm not a morning person, right? My creativity peak is in the evening. It's just how my biorhythm is. So my perfect day is completely different than your perfect day. But it's good to think about for yourself. When do you want to work and when do you want to focus? And can you create the circumstances that allows you to be focused? And are there enough breaks in your day? Because we know from the brain, I'm going to skip over this relatively quickly. So excuse me, but you can always invite me back. What happens in the brain when you are not focused? Because that's really interesting. Because then you start in a state that we call the default network, which is the part of the brain that becomes active when you're taking a break and not actively doing something. And then your brain starts to mind wander. And this mind wandering is very important for many things, but also for improving your concentration, because it allows the concentration networks in your brain to regain their strength again. It's good for creativity as well. You can be very creative during mind wandering. So we really want to have moments during the day in which you don't actively listen to a podcast, but do something that does not tax your working memory. And I'm a little bit worried that we don't mind wander that much anymore because of that stupid mobile phone. One moment of mind wandering and you being bored with that, whoop, and you're no longer mind wandering when you're waiting for the bus. I think we have to incorporate that less in our day, and we have to get rid of this automatically grasping our mobile phone, putting it somewhere in our pockets that we cannot reach it without us really thinking about it. This is called habits, and habits can be broken. There are many psychological theories about that. So I don't think evolution is that quick that all of a sudden we have a brain that is no longer able to concentrate. I'm positive in that sense that evolution is a slow process. Our environment has changed, but I think we can design our environment in such a way that we don't end up like Brian Cullinan. Thank you for your attention.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Stefan. So much information.
Sorry about that.
No. I was going through a mental list. I was like, okay, I need to mute my notifications, inform my colleagues that I'm only checking my email 3 times a day, and after this masterclass, I'm gonna go for a walk. I mean, perfect. I really think that I need to restructure my day. Fantastic. Yeah. We had so many questions.
Cool.
Thank you so much for your participation. And the first question that got quite a lot of upvotes, it's from Kinga. And she asks, Stefan, what is your opinion about procrastination?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So procrastination is the fact that it take a lot of time for you to start a task. I think we all have this preparation time. So think about Beethoven, where he counted his 60 beans, right? You could see that as procrastination, but it's just preparing for an upcoming task. So everyone has that. You're clearing your working memory, and you're getting your mind set for an upcoming task. The moment it becomes problematic is when you have negative feelings at that moment. When you're thinking, oh, I have a task upcoming that I'm not be able to do, I'm going to make mistakes, I'm not good at my job. If that's the reason why you're delaying your task, that's a problem. But if it's just you not being ready, not feeling ready to start writing, or it means that your working memory is still occupied with other things. And that's not a negative thing. It's something we all have and something to accept. And it's actually something to incorporate in your day. So those little moments of mind wandering, preparing for an upcoming task, clearing your working memory are actually important. Only when they're associated with negative feelings, then it becomes problematic.
Wow. So next time I won't feel guilty for taking a little bit longer to start up.
You cannot expect to switch immediately. Just think about how working memory works. There are switch costs. And sometimes these switch costs are huge. I've just given this presentation. Do you expect me to start working immediately after this webinar? Of course not. My head is still full with what I've just talked about. I need to take a break. It's probably going to take me 20 minutes to get back to any type of task. And I think we all have this, right?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And another great question from Katharina. Many job descriptions highlight the necessity of multitasking and make it look like a positive, essential skill. How do you recommend handling this at the workplace, and how would you recommend promoting less multitasking at work?
Yeah, so hire me to give a talk. No, that's stupid. Sorry, I'm joking. But I think that's what you have to educate them, right? So there are many videos online showing that we cannot multitask. It's not that complicated to explain to anyone. Actually, I hope I was sort of convincing in that sense. That a lot of people also are a great way of explaining that multitasking in essence is not possible, and it's actually harmful multitasking if it's done continuously. It will make you less productive and it will make you more tired. So also the management should realize that multitasking is a bad idea, and that they should create situations where people are able to focus interruptedly, without interruption on one task. This is Psych 101, right? It's one of the basics of how the brain works. And see if you convince them that that's actually also for them better, that you take breaks and that you allow people to focus on one thing at a time.
I think a lot of people are going to be sending this replay of the masterclass to their manager saying, hey, listen to the research. Multitasking, not a great idea. And now, final question, which I think is very nice also to hear from you personally. Aurora asks, what's your go-to technique/tip to focus and improve productivity?
For me personally, it's and this is very personal, but it's nice to stress the neurodiversity, is getting rid of my motor energy. So when I walk a lot, I run a lot, and it's something I've only been doing since the last couple of years. This has improved my concentration massively, because then when I'm sitting still, I need to concentrate. I'm actually tired. I'm physically tired, and I need I need to be physically tired in order to concentrate. And this is something that some people might not understand, but this is my personal advice. I think an advice to everyone is mindfulness. And if you ever thought about this and thought it was all a little bit fake, there is clear scientific evidence. The evidence is very clear. And if you're arguing right now that's not for me, then it is for you. And yes, it's hard. Everyone thinks it's hard, it's horrible, but it's if you feel like, nah, it's not mine, try it, and because then it might be something for you. There's nobody walking in there saying, oh, I'm so good at this, right? It's hard for everyone.
Absolutely. And so many great reactions from the audience. I'm curious, can we get a thumbs up if we would like to see Stefan host another masterclass and go deep? Oh yeah, a lot of thumbs up. Nice. And I highly recommend checking out Stefan's books as well. A lot of incredible information. And once again, thank you, Stefan, so much for this wonderful and really insightful masterclass. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for your participation. So many questions. And we're really, really excited to potentially have Stefan back as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.
Bye-bye, guys. Bye.